We tend to think the times we live in are unique. Sometimes things have never been this bad, or we've never been more divided, or the issues that are at hand have never been more critical to our children's future. Well, the black and white pictures might have given this away, but as you might have guessed, this is the 60s here in the US, and this is today. Protests, civil unrests, yeah, of course they vary in intensity from year to year and issue to issue and president to president, but they aren't new. But there is something that is a little different, that is relatively new. And that is, in recent years, there has been rising pressure for business to get involved in social and political issues. In the 60s, they were largely left out of these, again, larger societal protests and debates. But today, they are a key part of the conversation. And you'll recognize a lot of the issues here on the screen: immigration, DACA, the Paris Climate Agreement, Charlottesville, LGBT rights. Today, people expect corporations to play a role in these issues. Why? Well, we're seeing the convergence of several trends. First is the declining trust in traditional and large institutions like Congress and the media. We see this every day. I was watching MSNBC the other day, and there was an author on there who said that only 19% of millennials even trust those around them. Second, and one of the speakers talked about this yesterday, is the quadrupling of NGOs. So many of you guys in this room, but according to the UN, I think since the 80s, the number of NGOs have quadrupled. And they're rightfully, in many cases, acting like watchdogs. They're rallying the troops, and they're increasing the pressure on business because they understand that they are a key change agent and actor. And lastly, although there are several, higher expectations from people on business. Employees, customers, driven in large extent by millennials, but really resonating across all generations, for business to have a conscience. People are making decisions on what to buy, what to wear, where to shop, what to recommend, and where to work based on factors they didn't necessarily in the 60s, such as, does my company's values align with my own? And consumers are judging whether or not a company is a good corporate citizen based not on how much money it gives away to charity, based not on what it says about itself, but based on the actions it takes and the impacts it has. And Joe did a great job of explaining to us sort of like, how do we measure, how do we think about, how do we define those impacts? And NGOs and consumers have social media to use as a megaphone. The great speaker, Caroline from Twitter yesterday, talked about hashtag activism. And this, along with 24/7 news, allows trends to run like wildfire. So corporations are often in this position that they are so not used to, where they are loved one day and shamed the next. And it's very, very hard for them to sort of understand this. The tide can really turn on a dime. So if, how, and when companies proactively or reactively engage in these social and political issues, can have real results and reputational and bottom line impact. And you can see here on this slide, this is a recent survey from the Public Affairs Council, where 60% of companies have experienced rising stakeholder pressure to get involved in these social issues, and 74% expect that that will only increase. I think one of the most interesting things that came out of this survey was that the pressure isn't just coming from those in this room. It's not just coming from NGOs. It's not just coming from consumers. It's coming from employees. So in the survey, when they asked companies, who were the most important actors and whether or not you got engaged in a social and political issues, the first two, the top two, were both internal. And companies are responding. They are joining coalitions, signing petitions, although I do agree with what one of our previous speakers said, that it's pretty close to doing nothing. And they are lobbying. There are many things that they are doing, and they're not lobbying in the traditional sense where you think big corporations are going up to the Hill and saying, don't pass this regulation, it will hurt my business. It's not a direct tie. They're lobbying on issues either at the state, city or local level, think about everybody that got involved in HB2 in North Carolina and got involved in a similar bill in Texas. That are really, again, larger social and political issues. Sometimes they are bold. CEOs are taking personal stands, like Tim Cook and Ken Frazier, Howard Schultz, and Randall Stevenson. Sometimes they're more comfortable finding strength in numbers. They're convening dialogues, again, joining coalitions, and they're banding together to take stands on policy they know will have a negative impact on their business. And sometimes they're putting their money where their mouth is. They are buying ads. They're using promotional social posts and content marketing. But it's tricky. How do you decide, or how do corporations decide whether or not to engage, and how? What is a company to do? And how can the NGOs in this room help? Well, you have to have a plan. Just like when crisis arises, you have to know who the key decision makers are, who your potential supporters and detractors are, what your approval process is, and what channels you have to communicate your actions should you choose to take them. And you need to have these up front, because social and political situations, when they come, and either when the opportunity comes or the pressure's on you, they come fast. So here are some questions to ask yourself to get started. First and foremost, and this is always the question you should ask yourself, is who is my audience? Is it my employees? Is it my customers? Is it regulators, investors? And who may not agree with me if I should act on an issue? Who are going to be my detractors? And am I okay with a negative reaction from them? You know, maybe I am. Maybe I'm willing to take that risk. And what is the business risk of not doing anything at all? Is there more risk in acting or not acting? And you can ask yourself, what are my industry peers and my competitors doing? And NGOs, I challenge you to also think through your role and your goals. If your goal, for example, which I know many of you have this goal, is to ensure that climate protection legislation is passed or discriminatory legislation is not passed, how can you help? How can you help business through this process? And how can you provide counsel and support to companies and other actors that can come together so that collectively your actions can reach your ultimate goal? And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. That's it. Thank you.